Today, we're here to explore a fundamental theme, a powerful idea that can transform how we deal with life's ups and downs. In this video, we'll dive into a Buddhist teaching that reveals how to remain joyful and calm, regardless of the circumstances around us. We all face challenges, moments of uncertainty, frustration, and even pain. However, there is ancient wisdom that teaches us to find joy and peace, no matter what is happening externally. Our goal here is to share a Buddhist story that illustrates this practice of balance and serenity. Through this narrative, we'll see how it's possible to cultivate a mindset that strengthens us emotionally and allows us to view adversities from a new angle. When we can see joy and calm as an internal state, we free ourselves from relying on external conditions for happiness and peace. This video's message is an invitation to reflect on how you respond to difficulties. Do you often feel shaken by everyday problems? This feeling is common and entirely understandable, but there is an alternative path, an approach that can transform how we face each situation. This video aims to show exactly that, how Buddhist teachings can guide us toward a more serene and joyful life, where our emotional state doesn't need to be a prisoner of circumstances. To deeply understand how to maintain joy and serenity amid life's difficulties, it's essential to explore some fundamental concepts of Buddhist philosophy. Buddhism teaches that true peace and happiness do not depend on what happens outside us but are cultivated within. This teaching is based on the idea of detachment, that is, the ability to experience events without becoming emotionally attached to them. One of the central principles of Buddhist philosophy is acceptance, a concept that reminds us not to fight against the situations and emotions we face but to accept them as they are. However, this acceptance is not resignation, it's a deep understanding that everything, including the difficulties we face, is temporary. When we accept life's circumstances without resistance, we open space for a new kind of joy that doesn't depend on external factors. Another important aspect is emotional resilience, developed through the constant practice of mindfulness, or full awareness. In Buddhism, mindfulness is the practice of being fully present in each moment, observing our thoughts and feelings without being carried away by them. This practice allows us to recognize and understand our emotions without being controlled by them. As we practice mindfulness, we begin to view challenging situations more clearly, maintaining balance even amid chaos. These principles, detachment, acceptance, and mindfulness, form the foundation of a more serene and joyful life. They show us that by internalizing this philosophy, we can begin to build an emotional fortress, immune to external storms. And with this understanding, we'll now dive into the Buddhist story that brings these teachings to life in practice. With this understanding of Buddhist principles in mind, let's now hear a story that illustrates the practical application of these teachings in our daily lives. This narrative is an ancient Buddhist parable, a simple story that carries profound, timeless wisdom. It's a story about a monk who faces an adverse situation and, through his response to this challenge, shows us how serenity and joy can be maintained, even when everything around seems to be falling apart. In this tale, the monk is placed in circumstances that test his patience, resilience, and, above all, his ability to remain at peace. As we follow his journey, we're invited to reflect on how we react when faced with similar difficulties in our own lives. This monk represents the internal struggle we all face, the desire to stay calm amid chaos and the search for an unwavering joy that comes from within. As we recount the story, notice how each moment presents an opportunity for learning. This narrative not only inspires us but also offers a mirror, allowing us to see our own reactions and consider how we might transform our challenges into opportunities for growth. The story begins in a small monastery in the mountains, where a monk known for his tranquility and joy lived. He was admired by all the other monks for his ability to remain serene, regardless of the difficulties that arose in his daily life. Many sought him out to understand the secret behind his unshakable calm. And one morning, he decided to share his story. The monk explained that, years ago, he faced a very challenging time. On a particular day, while traveling to a distant village, he was caught in a fierce storm. The wind was so intense that it was impossible to move forward, and the rain poured in torrents, soaking him to the bone. Seeking shelter, the monk spotted a small abandoned hut and decided to take refuge there until the storm passed. However, upon reaching the hut, he realized that the place was in ruins. The roof leaked, the walls were fragile, and the floor was covered in mud. Instead of providing safety, the shelter he had found seemed like just another challenge. He could have felt frustrated or desperate, but instead, the monk took a deep breath and smiled. He remembered the teachings of acceptance and detachment and decided that, regardless of the circumstances, he would remain calm. As the storm raged outside, he closed his eyes and began to meditate. He allowed the sounds of the rain and wind to envelop him, accepting each moment as it was, without resisting or complaining. As he meditated, something remarkable happened. He began to feel a deep peace and a gentle joy, as if the storm around him was merely nature's dance, something temporary that would soon pass. Hours went by, and when the storm finally ceased, the monk left the hut and continued on his journey, still soaked but with a peace so intense that it seemed to light up the path ahead of him. When he arrived in the village, the locals, seeing his wet and tired state, asked him how he could be so calm and even smiling after going through such a difficult situation. The monk smiled and replied, "Joy and peace do not depend on where we are or what we are going through. They come from within. Even in the storm, we can choose to be happy." The villagers were astonished and began to ask questions about how they too could achieve such calm. The monk explained that this peace was not something he had always possessed. He had learned to cultivate it by practicing acceptance and detachment, remembering that each situation is temporary and that our peace doesn't have to be shaken by what we cannot control. And so, the monk's story spread, becoming an example of how we can face our own internal and external storms. It teaches us that, no matter how intense the difficulties are, we can find a place of peace and joy within ourselves if we allow ourselves to accept the present and let go of resisting what we cannot change. This narrative is more than just a simple story, it's a practice, an invitation to remember that even in the worst storms, we can find a place within us where peace and joy reside. And, as the monk demonstrated, that place is always accessible, as long as we look inward and accept each moment as it is. The story of the monk and his experience in the storm brings us profound lessons on how to handle life's challenges. First, the monk exemplifies the power of acceptance. He didn't try to change the circumstances, the storm was inevitable, and the hut, far from ideal. Instead of rebelling against the situation or succumbing to despair, he chose to embrace the moment, recognizing that what was beyond his control didn't have to disturb his peace. This attitude shows us how resistance to what we cannot change is often the source of our suffering. By accepting situations as they are, we release the energy that would otherwise be used in frustration and complaints. This doesn't mean we should passively accept everything that happens to us, but rather that, in unavoidable situations, we can choose not to let them consume our peace. Another key point is detachment. The monk didn't rely on perfect shelter or ideal conditions to feel at peace. He demonstrated that true joy doesn't come from attaining what we desire but from letting go of expectations and finding contentment in whatever life offers us. By practicing detachment, we free ourselves from the constant need to control everything around us. The monk's story invites us to apply these teachings in our own lives. In moments of adversity, we are challenged to choose between resisting or accepting, between clinging to ideals or finding joy in reality. This choice can completely transform our experience when facing challenges. The monk's story inspires us to apply the teachings of acceptance, detachment, and emotional resilience in our daily lives. But how, in practice, can we start cultivating the serenity and joy that do not depend on external circumstances? First, we can begin with the practice of acceptance. When facing a challenge, our first reaction is often resistance. We feel anger, frustration, or anxiety, and these emotions often arise because we want reality to be different from what it is. A practical way to work on acceptance is, when confronted with a difficult situation, to pause and ask ourselves, can I change this at this moment? If the answer is no, then this is an opportunity to practice acceptance. This simple act of acknowledgement is already a powerful step toward bringing calm. Another practical exercise is self-observation. We can dedicate a few minutes daily to observing our thoughts and emotions without judgment. This practice, also known as mindfulness, helps us identify patterns of reactivity that pull us away from peace. By recognizing these patterns, we gain more control over how we respond to external stimuli. We can start with 5 minutes of mindfulness each day, simply observing our breath and gently returning our focus whenever the mind wanders. Detachment can also be practiced daily. Often, we create rigid expectations about how things should turn out, and these expectations are frequent sources of disappointment and suffering. A way to practice detachment is by learning to adjust our expectations and accepting that things may not go as planned. For instance, when starting a project, we may have a clear vision of how we would like it to be completed, but at the same time, we cultivate flexibility to accept changes along the way, knowing that our well-being does not need to depend on a specific outcome. Additionally, it's helpful to remember that emotions are transient. Just like the storm the monk faced, they come and go. In moments of emotional difficulty, we can remind ourselves of the phrase, "This too shall pass." This simple reminder helps us see our emotions with less intensity, giving us the serenity to avoid reacting impulsively. Another powerful exercise is practicing gratitude. At the end of each day, reflecting on 3 things we are grateful for helps us see that even amid difficulties, there are positive elements in our lives. This practice strengthens a positive mindset and helps us focus on what brings us joy, even during challenging times. Finally, incorporating these teachings into our daily routine requires consistency. Small acts, like pausing to take a deep breath when faced with a stressful situation or allowing ourselves a few minutes of silence to reconnect, are powerful in strengthening emotional resilience. Constant practice is what gradually helps us build a foundation of inner peace that, like the monk in the storm, allows us to maintain joy and calm regardless of what we face. In addition to the principles and practices we've discussed, there are some simple techniques that can help us maintain calm and joy in our daily lives. These practices have been developed over centuries and have proven effective in cultivating a more serene and resilient mind. The first technique is breath meditation, a fundamental practice in Buddhist philosophy. To begin, find a quiet place, sit comfortably, and close your eyes. Focus on your breathing, observing the air entering and leaving. Whenever your mind drifts, gently bring your attention back to your breath. This practice helps cultivate presence and reduce mental agitation. Over time, it promotes a sense of peace that becomes increasingly natural, allowing us to face challenges with greater calm. Another technique is visualization. When feeling stressed or worried, imagine a place where you feel at peace. It could be a beach, a forest, or a special place for you. Visualize yourself in this environment, enjoying the calm and beauty around you. Visualization acts as a mental refuge, allowing us to reconnect with tranquility, regardless of what's happening externally. Practicing compassion is also a powerful tool for maintaining joy. In Buddhism, compassion is considered one of the keys to a fulfilled life. Throughout the day, try to perform acts of kindness, whether it's helping someone, listening without judgment, or simply offering a smile. Compassion not only improves the well-being of those who receive it but also helps us feel more connected and at peace. When we are in harmony with others, our own happiness grows stronger. Journaling, or the practice of writing down our thoughts and emotions, is also a simple technique that can make a big difference. Taking a few minutes at the end of the day to write about what we feel, the difficulties and the learnings, helps us process our emotions in a healthy way. This practice allows us to observe our thoughts with more clarity and discernment, which reduces the impact of negative emotions. Finally, the practice of gratitude, as mentioned earlier, is a valuable resource. Each morning, take a moment to think of 3 things you're grateful for. This practice helps train the mind to focus on the positive aspects of life, creating a foundation for a more joyful and positive outlook. Over time, This mindset becomes a foundation for facing challenges with ease. These techniques are practical and accessible, and when applied consistently, they create a foundation of peace and resilience that allows us, like the monk in the story, to remain calm and joyful amid life's storms. The journey we've taken here shows us that true joy and peace are internal states, accessible to each of us, regardless of external circumstances. The story of the monk inspires us to view difficulties in a new way, as opportunities for growth and learning, rather than as obstacles to our well-being. Just as he found serenity in the middle of the storm, we, too, can find tranquility amid challenges by cultivating acceptance, detachment, and compassion. When we understand that joy can flourish within us, without relying on what's happening around us, we free ourselves from the constant search for perfect conditions. We come to realize that happiness is not a destination to be reached but a state that we can choose. This path may not always be easy, but with practice and perseverance, it becomes increasingly natural. As we conclude this reflection, remember the monk's words: joy and peace do not depend on where we are or what we're going through. They can be cultivated at any moment if we look within. May this message inspire you to seek this inner peace and to find, even on difficult days, a joy that nothing can shake. We hope this message has touched your heart and brought a new perspective on handling life's challenges. Buddhist philosophy offers us tools to maintain joy and inner peace, regardless of circumstances, and our hope is that you can carry this teaching into your life. If this story resonated with you, we invite you to share this video with others who might benefit from this message of serenity and resilience. By spreading this wisdom, we contribute to a more peaceful and conscious world. We would also love to hear about your experiences. How do you handle difficult moments? Is there a practice that helps you stay calm? Share your thoughts in the comments so we can learn together. Lastly, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to continue receiving content that promotes self-knowledge, emotional well-being, and spiritual wisdom. Each time we practice these teachings, we take another step toward a fuller, more meaningful life.